Okay, so good evening, everyone. I hope you got some beers. So, quick things. A lot of people think that at Circle we do great stuff, it's always awesome and so on. The reality is a bit different. So we need to do a lot of, I would say, vibe coding or tests and failure to make great stuff. So I will talk about the background of vulnerability lookup. Maybe some of you know the project. It's quite successful. We have a backend software for cross-correlation through vulnerabilities. We maintain it for more than 1 year nowadays. It's used by many organizations. It's a backend for the European Vulnerability Database. It's a reference implementation for GCV. So it's cool, it's great, but, you know, today's failures about. So the thing is, where the design from vulnerability lookup came from, it came from the original design of a software I designed called CVE-Search that maybe some of you used some years ago. And actually, we really improved the design of vulnerability lookup through all the issue and the wreckage of CVE-Search. I just have like less than 10 minutes, so I will not go into all the errors and mistakes, but CVE-Search started as a very, very small project. So technically, it started as an importer of the XML format from NVD CVE, which was the original format. And at that time, someone else decided to say, oh, MongoDB is great. And I was looking at it. Oh, yeah, it's cool. So I was like starting with writing parser in XML to ingest into MongoDB for having the NVD feeds. It makes sense. I think it's something that you do day to day. MongoDB has this kind of JSON schema that you can just like import and everything works out of the box. It's awesome and so on. But then the reality, I think I was fronting the reality with users, with vendors, with the NVD feeds and so on. And I will share with you some of the issues. First of all, I did an assumption, you know, the NVD ecosystem is known to be done by NIST at that time, CVE programs, is like professionals. It's a reliable data provider. It's not the reality. So actually, they are not reliable at all. The data that they provide was like sometimes a bit clumsy, not complete. They decided at some point in time, and this one was one of the biggest mistakes they did, they decided to stop providing dumps. So they had actual dumps that you can download and do the import. And what they decided to do is to go for an unreliable, rate-limited API that's giving 500 errors on random levels. And that's the reality of the NVD database. So our pipeline was expecting kind of stability there, but technically the providers was actually getting more and more into problems. So the API was broken for days sometimes. So we were some surprise and so on. So first of all, for us, it was like I was having a lot of faith into their systems, into their programs and so on. I'm not blaming anyone, but I was just like, I think the design evolution was a kind of disaster. I didn't expect that. So I was really expecting to have like proper CVE export, everything is fine and so on. So first of all, we decided to not do like this. And for vulnerability lookup, for example, we provide dumps. So the software itself can automatically provide dumps that you can re-ingest and so on, which is, I think, quite important. No, this one is the most fun part. So MongoDB was the initial design decision, and I think this one was my worst decision in life, I would say. I was like, oh, that's MongoDB can be fine-tuned. I think it's totally fine. It should work and so on. So cv.circle.lu was running CVE-Search, and initially it was a small project. You had some people adding more and more API clients, using our API publicly. The API was public and so on, so we get more and more users. And we end up to a level of up to 10,000 requests per second, which I think looks like, for MongoDB, if you read their white paper and so on, yeah, it's totally fine. You have this Wired Tiger, you know, the name is incredible. Wired Tiger, it's the backend of storage for MongoDB. And I remember I was like fine-tuning it like in the middle of the night, expecting it was like working and so on. And I pushed to its physical limits. Hardware-wise, we tried everything and so on. And the final optimizations was actually to put the full database in RAMFS. So it was fast. I mean, it was like perfectly fine. It was working on operational one and so on. just there's a small thing that you have to not forget about RAMFS when you do the fine tuning. So you do the fine tuning in 3 a.m., you see it's fast, everyone is happy, it's working well, and then the server reboot. So then we're like, okay, it's a good idea. So we were like, okay, it's fine. Just get a dump from the API and that's it. Unfortunately, the API on NVT was so unreliable. It was the day that it was giving like 500 errors. So we were basically facing the issue that, okay, the service might be done for 1 or 2 days until that we completely restore the database. So for us, it was like a good, I would say, experiment that relying on very shiny database because they have like schema based on JSON and so on was a really bad move. So we decided at some point for vulnerability lookup is not the right way to do it. Another thing that is really naive from our side was at the time, and I think the ecosystem change, and I think it's go back to what Eric was mentioning previously. We were expecting that the universe is stable, which is at all not the truth. And it was the same for CVE. I mean, CVE like years ago was the only sources, they were producing vulnerability information and so on. But everything changed in the past years. First, the NVD database and the backend system and so on from them was getting more and more broken. But what I discovered is we had like many vendors providing additional feeds. So a new standard. So for example, Oasis produces CSAF standard, which is great. But then you have many vendors providing CSAF feeds. You have these non-exploited vulnerabilities in different formats. GitHub started to have advisories tools, CSAF specific one. So you have plenty of advisories. Obviously, each is their own format and so on. And the biggest mistake we did for CVE-Search was to actually, the name say it is CVE. We decided to design the MongoDB database based on the CVE storage, which was a schema, which was a bad idea, because technically CVE was not a stable one. It's not a stable thing. So technically CVE was like the center of the universe, but it's not the reality. It's just an unstable star like the others in the galaxy. So, it was the second thing that we actually learned for that. So for us, and I think that was really needed. So CVE-Search worked and did the purpose. A lot of people were using it. We still kind of maintaining it, but we actually asked people to go to vulnerability lookup. But now when we design the software, we actually build for stability. So we know that we will get chaos. We will get chaos from vendors, suppliers, and so on. It will be unreliable, unstable. It might be inaccessible on the weekends and so on. So we actually, for the MongoDB, the RAMFS idea was not a really good idea, but it was like solving the problems for a small period of times. Another thing that we discovered is like many sources are actually broken. Indeed, new ones, standardized ones. They are not respecting the format. Whatever they claim, if they are ISO standard, whatever, they don't respect format. So for us, we stop having faith and belief on those data sources. So we really designed vulnerability lookup into being multi-sources. This design decision was good because we had feedback from others that started to basically focus on a very specific format and it was failures. We completely decouple the components. So that means if one of the sources is completely broken, we can still have all the complete system running and working. And that's why we exactly go for vulnerability lookup with, for us, it was very important to have multi-source ingestions, traceable data. So if something goes wrong, we can just get rid of them. We can basically decouple API and storage properly. We have a key value store, which is not really bound to any format. So we are kind of independent and we are kind of scalable on the worker side. So we replace it, it's fine. But I think for me personally, it was a kind of therapy, to not give too much faith into some providers. So if you're interested into vulnerability lookup, there's some links. And if you are curious about the history of CVE-Search, you can look at the Git commit and you'll see that, the evolution of the software. Thank you very much.